How can moving to our own melody of pursuing multiple masters guide us towards our most creative personal visions? And how can imperfection and rawness be the catalyst for new innovative ideas? Furthermore, how can art, design, and architecture dialogue to form a Milan Design Week installation? And what are the potentials of body and space as sensorial vessels to spark healing, relief, and a renaissance of the real? Today, on the second episode of Archfolio, is our guest, Annabelle Schneider, to share with us her answers. Hello everyone, I'm your host Julian, and welcome to episode 2 of the Archfolio. With Milan Design Week in full bloom, we're beyond elated and honored that today we get to sit down with special guest Annabelle Schneider, designer and creator of Renaissance of the Real, one of the most talked about and visited installations of the week, which was shortlisted yesterday for the 2026 Fuorisalone Award. The multisensorial, immersive experience is designed in collaboration with USM and Snohetta, infusing slow reflection, intention, and reconnection with the present and the ethos of its visitors. As for Annabelle Schneider, she is a Swiss-born, New York-based experienced designer and artist with a rich background in branding, installation, and design management. In addition to Design Week, she is currently exhibiting as well in Mount Pilatus, Switzerland, and has created past projects for recent exhibitions in New York, Barcelona, and Basel, all whilst holding a design and teaching position at Parsons School of Design. She imbues all her work with a transformative quality that fosters connection, well-being, and therapeutic healing, placing importance on the experience of the body and the mind. And so it is with this energy of serenity that we welcome today, Annabelle Schneider. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. How have you been? How has the chaos of this week taken its toll on you? Are you doing okay? Are you settled or?
Well, I would need more bubbles to get some breath. And
I was going to say, do you go into your own bubble to calm down your nerves in the morning before everyone arrives?
I wish, but it's just a very intense week. I meet so many people from all over the place. People are very much resonating, which is beautiful. It's the best that could have happened, and I have an amazing time in Milan, but yes. Mm-hmm. My body is tired.
Would you say it's one of the busiest weeks of your life so far, like this design week, or have you had some crazy experiences before as well?
I had, but they lasted maybe 3 days.
Oh,
that was good. Now we're talking a lot because there was also 1 week of build-up.
Yeah.
And, everything that belongs to a project, like coming to life. Yes. That was before. But that's a process.
That's a
process.
It's
fine. And then it's about managing your time, but also, taking every day 1 hour for you. Maybe 1 hour is too much. I would recommend though. I was like, I should take 20 minutes by myself and just be invisible in my little bubble.
Meditate.
Or go to nature or something and just don't look on the phone.
Exactly. Disconnect with the screens, with reality. But you were talking about like the process, and we talked about how it took a week to install, but we want to go even further back. And in the spirit of studenthood, ask about the journey you went through when you just started out, because you have a unique advantage, which is you had 2 degrees. So how did you navigate post-grad with 2 degrees, the environment of the industry as it was back then?
That's a very good question. And thank you also for doing such profound research. I appreciate that. Because yes, I think the choices I made, why I study what and at what time, really are helping me these days a lot. Mm-hmm. So I first, as you said, studied strategic design management, and that was a pilot study course at HSLU in Lucerne University, but it was international. And nobody really understood what that is. Everybody was like, oh, you're a designer, but actually it's the management of design and how they advertised it. And what attracted me a lot was really it said it's about social cultural changes, it's about it's about human design, and it's about connecting, but it's very generalistic. Like you can basically do anything after that. But the focus is really of like how also the environment resonates with us, and looking at the students that were back then in my cohort, what they did after, everybody went a little bit in a different direction. So I went into branding for companies that I resonated with in a way of like how stories could be told. So I was first working for Laufen, which is a Swiss bathroom company. They looked for somebody in marketing, and I was like, could be interesting because the bathroom as a space is something very interesting to me, as we use it as a ritual, but also as a necessity. How you're engaging with the mirror, or what happens under the shower, or all these things. It's kind of a sanctuary. It's kind of a very private space. So I was in branding there for 3 or 4 years, I forgot, and a significant time. I was also in event management later because, again, like more this temporary installations that should evoke some emotions, but I was always on the branding side. Then later I worked also for Vitra, the Swiss design furniture company, also globally, and worked a lot on showrooms and campaigns. They always talk about like how we're living. And then I always had interior designers on my team, and I gave them the strategy of how they should, like, you know, break down the narrative of the story we want to tell to the physical environment. And I was like, hold on, actually, this is my most biggest passion. I care so much about how we interact and how we connect. And I think physical spaces are the most powerful for that. We bring a platform, we bring a shell where life can happen, and we can direct the journey through it. So I was like, I have to learn the tools for an architect. And then I finally went to New York because I was really, since I was 6, I really wanted to go to New York. And I don't know what it was. No, I know. It was the music, the authenticity, the realness, and the speed, the dynamics, everything. And I visited so many times before. And I studied again at Parsons, where I'm still teaching, and studied interior design. Actually, I did 2 degrees. First, I did one that was an AAS, which is really meant for career change. It's not, you know, it's not as elite as a master's or something, but I learned so much. It did the job. I learned CAD, I learned Rhino, I learned all these things. I learned some, you know, regulations and everything. And then I started to work for Snarchitecture with Daniel Arsham, and worked like on Kith, like retail stores. And then later I worked for another interior design company, but like, you know, designing hotels and everything. It was too rigid. I want to break out of this thing.
You want to break out of that shell.
Yeah, and I thought so much about the senses as well, and how music, especially, because music for me comes first with everything. So
me too. I love that. Like, we're resonating with that same.
Yeah, it's the frequencies, and you know, in the end, we're all also frequencies, and I think it's this intangible thing, but it really can move you, and it also is memorable. Like sometimes, if it really touches you, it can, same as scent as well. It can bring you back to a time. So I went into fashion runway design and worked also a little bit with Virgil Abloh, like on fashion shows, which was very amazing to do because I love the choreography and also the body of space and the performative aspect. I also love dance, for instance. But then I realized, like, it's crazy when you do a fashion show in New York and all the money that goes into a 15-minute show, and it's so refined, and then it's just basically garbage in the end. Like, this is no reuse of the materials, at least back then. Not. I was like, somehow this is not the future. So I was at the point where I didn't really know, okay, where do I go now? And as life happens, you have to have the eyes open and be open for opportunities, I think, and listen what resonates. And there was this person at Parsons that I didn't know before, and he told me, like, but why did you do the AAS? Like, you should have done a master's. And I'm like, no, but I needed to learn the tools. I don't need to do another master's. And he's like, why don't you apply for another one? Then you can actually edit your voice and really think about what you're standing for now with all this work experience. I was like, yeah, I guess it's at that, but it's so expensive. But it would be the right time. But then I applied and I got a scholarship, which was very, very helpful. And that made me then decide, okay, I go back to school.
Wow.
I study again. And then I was teaching already. And it really, really helped me to edit my voice and find a vision. And
I mean, I love hearing these type of stories because it just shows how non-linear, you know, like the career can be. You did a first master's and then you found a passion and then you switched and pivoted and moved to New York and then you followed the AAS and then the Master of Interior Design. I love that, like, you were just so fluid. You know, it's kind of like its own melodic score. You were doing your own music and
love that.
Like, you know, you kind of played your own tune, and through each of these experiences, you kind of acquired a piece of the creative craft you exerce today. You know, you kind of had like the fashion, the choreography, you had the music and the energy of the city, and then interior design and the detail of management. You kind of were assembling all the qualities you need to exert today. And when it comes to your vision, was it also something that grew with each step as you progressed? Or do you feel like assembling all these qualities then allowed you to find the work you exert today?
I think it was very hard to articulate my vision in the beginning. I knew I'm about spaces and people. I'm very much about people, even though sometimes I think, people, I prefer animals, but like, no, but I want to frame spaces or some cocoon play, whatever, like, some sanctuaries where you actually can go and you want to also return.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an add-on to your life, and it's maybe also a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also during the time, you cannot exclude what happened in the world. When I started, technology was by far nowhere where we are now.
Yeah.
So so much happened with technology, and I'm not at all against technology, but I think we're standing at a very critical point, and the acceleration is crazy, and how we're even processing how technology is influencing our life. And I'm seeing it myself, like interacting with students and, how they lose patience. I hope it's not for everyone the same, but I have those experiences, like patience to go through the design process and figure out something.
Patience, but also,
new.
Resilience. I feel like that's a really important point. Like, did you encounter any moments when you were presenting your visions or when you were kind of manifesting that idea? Did you receive any criticism or a setback that really affected you, but that you had to overcome?
100%. It's like there's also a lot of, it looks, when you look from the outside, oh, great, everything sounds perfect. It's so, wow. But there's so many doors that closed, or so many things I had to give up. I'm not talking about them. I also forget them. I think it's a mechanism.
Yeah.
But in the process where you're doing that, and that's the beauty of being human, like you find in the mistakes or in the hardship or in the challenges, you really find your position if you engage with it and you sit with it. And I think in those imperfections, or, like in my installation right now, we have some leaves in the entry, or people lose hair. And you see it on a white floor. And I would be like, ugh, it's so dirty. We have to immediately clean. But we're in nature. And I think the leaves actually give me some inspiration for some new work. And, as first, like, no, it's great. I actually leave them a little bit, of course, not let it like overboard with dirtiness, but this in this moment of spontaneity. And I think that's something we lack a lot. And we're so impatient. And we don't really have attention spans too anymore. Every one of us, we're all like glued to the phone.
Exactly. But it's also like what you're saying about, like, having that imperfection can sometimes lead to a new idea. Sometimes like having that flaw of like having a leaf there or having a couple leaves kind of scattered. At first you want to like itch it out and be like, no, I'm going to move it away. But if you let it sit there for a second and if you embrace that can trigger new ideas. That can trigger new designs or ideas. So like that's just I've never heard that before. And that's a really inspiring point of view for us to think about and realize, hey, sometimes if that's there, maybe that can trigger how people react to that or how people interact with it. Maybe they take a different path, and maybe that different path can lead to a different shape or a different immersion. So I think that's quite powerful.
Yeah, I also think, and again, to technology, I feel like the AI develops so many images so rapidly fast, and they look sometimes quite good. They do their job. I think it's not to, I mean, I use them for the process as well, but it's not my end work. It's really more to communicate. Like, we have to know how we get to a point, but we still have to understand how something is composed. And that's why I would really embrace different medium at the same time in the process to figure out how something really works in physical, and also embrace, the same already with 3D renderings, like architectural. I feel, yes, they look very nice, but they don't bring emotions across like that. They're very much, everything is a little bit the same, unless you find, I mean, for instance, I got complaints like from clients. They always were like, oh my God, your renderings are so dreamy. There's like this light and la la la. But I was like, no, that's coming from, I edit them in Photoshop, and I just have my methods in Photoshop, and that's how I am. And it's like probably the emotions the light is so important for me. So I feel that's how I do the other layers to it. Or then I also feel like, sometimes in presentations for clients, or even like during studying, I was to figure out the concept of a space or anything, like you want to present the concept, I always hand sketch.
Yes.
Because I feel for me, it's fast, and I can bring across, my hand is imperfect. It has little curves and whatever, and I like draw a line on top of a line, and it's not perfect, but I bring across a message and people understand it, and I talk through it, and then it's really, it's fast done. It's very personal, And it's, I think, with exactly those curves in the handwriting is also like a lot of emotion.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's fast, but there's a soul, there's a presence to it. Most of these times, the renders we see from productions, it's very devoid of any humanness to it. It's very sterile. So like, even those type of fast drawings convey so much more in terms of intention and meaning. And to kind of end off this first part, you gave so much good advice already, but is there another important point you would want to convey to students when approaching how they design their processes or how they start out on their ideas and how they can manifest that slowly?
The world around you is your friend. No, I really think like don't look too much. Like look on your desk, what's there, also in terms of material, of shape. Like go out, walk around, take a stroll, you know, in your bubble world. Like you're just like, you need some fresh air and you may be stuck, but then you maybe see something all of a sudden in a window, I don't know, or you see something strange that you think, okay, if I had to work with this and for this goal, how would I integrate that? How could there be a connection all of a sudden? Or maybe you also dedicate to a material and then you explore this material and you see how can I form with this material, what's the resonance to other elements that surround it, because nothing stands alone. So make small models. I'm not talking about refined architecture models, but really prototypes with folding papers and like putting light on it and see how it works, like see the effect of color and light, see how it resonates with sound, like, you know, is it echoing, is it not? Think about the qualities of a material. I think that's a big inspiration point for me as well, because when I work now with, I'm not always working with the same material, but for this installation, especially, of course, but, you know, like having space made out only of fabric, and of course, an inflatable medium is not at all new. And in this design week, we, for some reason, see so many inflatables.
I was going to say, yeah.
But yeah, it's, for me, it's really about, we have this reduced white fabric and it's just holding up with 4 ventilators and hold by air and light. That's the sensation, and we have some scent in it, but the fabric is so easily resonating, and we see all of a sudden this bubble space, you know, like folding in and coming out again. I'm like, oh, you can watch the trees, but I think also sometimes we're too used of what happens again and again. So this is a new shape of how to also show, hey, actually there is a whole circulation of sensations going on, and my design reacts to it, or it's a dialogue.
I love that. Thank you for that first part. Like what you just said, I was also, when I was visiting, was noticing, you know, it's like a lung. It moves, and then you become aware of your own movement in your own body. Like that element of rawness to creation is slowly starting to lose itself. And thank you for stressing that for students to, you know, pick that back up and experiment more. That's really great knowledge. So thank you for that.
I would like to add something.
Yes, please. Of course.
You know, also when you work with your hands and you have certain force in it and you can like manipulate the material, and then don't lose technology, like use your phone and take pictures, document it so well, because in there you will see it then differently as you do with your eyes. I think their technology is very helpful. Or, you know, the editing of certain things so you can achieve, or, you know, play with scale. Take the phone very close up to your tiny paper crumb model and all of a sudden you see the beauty in the folds, and you can scale that up to a building. Like there's so many options.
There's so many, like, use technology as a tool to amplify, not to simply start.
Not giving you the answer right away.
Oh, I'm so happy that you share with us today.
Oh, it's good questions.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be right back after the break, but in the meantime, let the music that filled the space carry you away. Thank you for joining us again for the second half, where we're going to talk about Annabelle Schneider's design ethos and how it's manifested in this week's Renaissance of the Real installation. So, I mean, the talk of the town is your installation. I mean, it's everywhere. I see images online. I see renders and plenty of people on Instagram tagging you on their stories about the installation in its complete form. But could you take us back to when the idea was just an inkling? What triggered this thought process? Was it kind of an accumulation of the different installations you had before, or did this stem from a new idea that you then implemented to what you had already created before?
It comes a long way. Goes back to 2024.
2024. Wow,
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So I was invited 2024 for a pitch from the Swiss consulate in New York. They invited a couple of Swiss designers and artists that are based in New York about having an idea for New York City by design, for showing something that represents Swiss design. And for me, Swiss design is not at all eclectic, but it's very timeless. It's very clever. And it's classics, a lot of classics. And I also have the big opinion that we don't need more products if they don't really make sense in our life. We don't need 100,000 new chairs, in my opinion. We have everything.
Yes.
Or let's see how you can work with something that's already there and embed it in a new context. Find something with what's there. So my proposal was to have this sanctuary space that's like a cocoon or a bubble that's just made with air and fabric. Because for me, the senses in digital age are very important. And we're so limited with the senses in digital. We basically touch glass every day and we scroll. That's it. And we click on a button. Everything can be delivered to us. So we're not going to physical spaces necessarily anymore so much. And that's really impacting well-being and our mental health. So all these things, I wanted really to create a space where people come together, but also a space that not enhances what we already have around it, a million of more projections and make it really immersive. I hate that word. But then people tell me this is also immersive, but it's very reduced. And it works with the senses and the sensations of the environment. So I proposed that. We did it. We showed it in a skyscraper that was emptied out in New York, so very rough 80s floor where you saw a lot of computer cables hanging out still from Wall Street and everything. I love the contrast because it was this very fragile white living organism pressed or squeezed into this very strong architectural thing that's somehow in a process of demolition. And USM was a partner there as well, and I worked with their furniture as having some of them in the installation. And then they also had a bar, beautiful bar next to it. But I felt something is off, like we need to bring it more together. And then the idea came in summer. I was like, oh my God, we should have played with those contrasts like 100% more. We should have brought together, the USM system is so modular and so clever. And you can build a whole structure, even though it's a furniture piece. But it also originally comes from architecture.
Yeah.
So... And this structure is the gravity I want to tell people. So I had this idea and I pitched it to USM in summer 2024.
Wow.
I did renderings and sketches and everything. And it was a long, long way. And then in the process, USM asked me if I want to work with architects. They were like, it would be a beautiful conversation having art, design, and architecture brought together. I'm not a fan of separating all these things so much because I think we should get loose a little bit about definitions, I feel.
It's time to be fluid.
Yeah. And I know Snohetta quite well in New York, and I know the director very well. She's a good friend. And I also feel their design language could fit with my bubble. So I asked them, hey, do you want to create the framework and the site-specific installation at Fondazione Luigi Rovati in this courtyard? And they said yes. And we did that all in dialogue, then very also fluid together. They suggested the USM framework like this. Then I came with the bubble in it and nice back and forth and very nice collaboration. I think that's also the time, don't be afraid to collaborate and have those dialogues. That also brings new ideas and often also better results.
Yeah, no, I was going to say what makes it so unique was that here it's really like a trinity of disciplines coming together to form and shape this new installation that speaks so well to the purpose you want it to give. And you literally answered my second question, which is about the design philosophy of Snohetta and USM and how you incorporated that together. Even on top of that, the location itself was so perfect. I mean, you have even the ground itself that seems to have these swelling pieces of like green pasture that complements so well the amorphous shape of your fabric and the membranes. Everything just flowed perfectly in the installation, and it creates such a full body experience that, I mean, as a visitor, I was really impressed by. Me and my friend, we spent 30 minutes there meditating.
It's so nice.
I tried to lead a meditation for the first
Oh my
time
God.
in the space, because since we were the first ones there was no one. It was perfect. So it was so incredible. But within the inside, like you were saying, it's not immersive itself because you're not bringing something new. I feel like you were making us aware of what's already present. And in that sense, about this sense of presence and the sense of body, how do you perceive the limits or potentials of the body? And how do you then conceive the experience around it? Are there limits to what you think the body can understand or grasp, or are there boundaries that you try to push? How does like the body become the core for what you build around? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense, but you make me think about the limits, because I never thought about that, but or not so consciously, but yeah, it's a very important question. I think, by the gesture of having this very cocoon space that's very organic, many people tell me they feel like in a womb. I don't know how they're
I told my friend, I was like, we are in a womb right now when I was visiting. I literally said that to my friend.
Great. So, I mean, it's beautiful because it's a rooted thing. And also our first sense we develop as humans is really touch. And there's another artist which I really love, and I met her personally. She's amazing. Her name is Lucy McRae, and she does a lot of work about speculative futures and how. Sorry, that's another topic right now, but I feel like that's when we talk about wombs, that's interesting. How the touch is our first sensation we have, and that's also why we need connections and hugs and touch each other and feel temperatures and everything. And how I think a person should have 8 hugs a day to feel good. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, and she does these things, like if machine takes over and women cannot get or are less fertile these days and all this, like what happens if we're born in a plastic bag? Like, do we then connect to machines first because we don't have the sense of touch anymore? And for me, also tactility is very important, but then also this hugging space. Like, if somebody doesn't hug you, the space should hug you, I feel. And on purpose, you have to take off your shoes, and it's soft floor. And I was very, not nervous, but I didn't know how it will work at Design Week, because Design Week, everybody goes from one installation to the next. We have long lines, which is crazy. And people take a lot of pictures, which is nothing wrong, but it would be also to realize, stretch time and slow down and realize, okay, I took pictures, but now I actually have to see the space. I have to experiencing it and then lie down. And that would be in other places, I've showed this installation in other forms, like not with USM and Snohetta together, but like those bubble spaces that are always site-specific. I really advise people, and also the people who run in the space, like people need to lie down. And I have pillows all over the place.
Yes,
and
we use them.
That's great. No, and it should be alive, and you should find your little cocoon space to just be. And I had those experiences when I showed it in Uzbekistan. It was showed in a shopping mall, and first I was like, oh my God, in a shopping mall. It's not an activation like that. It's an art piece, actually. But then they were like, oh, you don't want to show it in a museum. And it was complicated. It was a different culture and like a lot of things about it. But then it was actually a huge success. I'm so grateful I did that. The installation was placed in the middle of the shopping mall. You saw it from each floor. It was the centerpiece and the heart. And I was like, in narrative, we also really can reflect on consumption. Like, what do we consume every day? And why do we come to a shopping mall?
Yeah.
But also shopping malls also have problems being alive and, sustaining in these days. So we need to rethink those spaces too. It was beautiful because apart from you showing it in a museum or in a gallery, every type of person comes there. And they maybe have zero access to architecture, art, and design. But they see that weird thing, and then they're taking pictures, and they're curious, and they're going in, and they're taking pictures still. But I had those 2 men, very critical, older, And they came to me like, are you the artist? So what do we do in there? We took pictures, but so no what? And I'm like, well, go back in, take your shoes off again, lie down. They came back out maybe after 2 hours, had tears in their eyes, and they needed to give me a long hug. And they told me, wow, my work really made them think about their life. And they had a very intimate exchange with each other that they never had before. And I'm like, wow, that's the biggest compliment I can get. Because my work can get
like validating and powerful.
Yeah, it happened in a shopping mall.
I know too. Like
that's so strange.
But then, like, I feel like you wouldn't have that if it was in a museum, because maybe the type of audience a museum brings is not the type of audience a shopping mall brings. So it's also like a blessing that somehow it's in a place that's quite ubiquitous for people to come visit. I mean, going back to what you said about like them spending the time and then the haptic quality of experiencing your space. You know, we also received warm towels before and the mints. You were rekindling all 5 senses to come together to find peace. And there's a storyline of healing and emotional serenity in your work. And you've also employed that for trauma relief patients, helping them find this re-spatialization of their sense and their body and their mind. Do they teach you new things as well? Or did you find that really these 5 senses are crucial in every point of your installations? Or do you really try to hone in more on the smell or the sound, like the ambient noise I was playing, or the touch? Do they all come together?
I think it's about the very conscious user experience, you know, what touch point, where. Like it's like a dramaturgy. I cannot say this word.
Okay.
Dramaturgy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like like a theater. You know, you enter a space and then you maybe have a light sensation, or maybe first a scent. Then it needs to reduce because all of a sudden the body gets used to things, and then we don't have this sensation anymore. It should not be just flat and everywhere. So it's really about the punctual where it's happening, what, like a choreography of senses throughout the space. And when you talk about patients, or also neurodivergent, which I'm very into as well, you know, like spaces. And I used to teach inclusive design at Parsons, and there we talk about all the different, what does that even mean? People have so many conditions in a way, starting with ADHD, or then going to also somebody who cannot see or not hear, or there's a lot. And I think at some point you have to focus on the target group. Like a little bit, like what are the conditions? Like if somebody doesn't see at all, you probably design different.
Yeah.
So I don't want to generalize those things when it comes to really applied therapeutic spaces. It really depends to whom you're talking, I believe. Right. Even though I have to say on this installation on the mountain, which was also a breathing cocoon, there was a blind person and she was with the man, and the man had a lot of questions, and her too, but she had her eyes open. I didn't really realize she's blind for so long, and I felt very bad, but also made me feel very happy in the end, because they had many questions and he explained to her, you know, now it's coming down, it's breathing, and here's a soft pillow, and there we see also soft projections of something, and this light is now like that. And he explained it, interesting. And then I was also explaining something, but then I realized, then she told me, you know, I don't see. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize that, but you followed what he said so much, and you also reacted. And she told me she feels so comfortable. She wants this at home. And I was very happy that she also had the sensation, probably also the soft floor and this sheltered with the fabric.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's not just the site, it's everything that builds and swells around the site that is able to evoke such emotion and trigger such connection with it. And the fact that it's worked for the scale of the design week, but also on the scale of the individual and the specific type of person that cannot see or maybe cannot hear. The two contrasts both are in this moment feeling the presence of what you're trying to convey, this renaissance. And that must be incredibly powerful, and it must be so inspiring to continue to think of the ways that you could make it even more accessible or more intimate. I think that's just a great opening to the future of your work. I mean, to close off, do you have any future projects or things that you're planning now with the response you've gotten from Design Week? Maybe things you want to test or new behaviors you want to see if people will react to?
I think I want to integrate nature even much more.
Oh, okay.
And with the season changes.
Seasons.
But not, you know, not planting a tree. Like in other ways, like really with the senses. and really playing with the cycles, because I think that we are nature.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking so much about humanity versus machine. And I think we're standing at the point right now where we all have to talk about that and really critically think also what each one's work is, everyone. And really think, what does it mean to be human? And I think vulnerability and emotions are huge. And they're not always just happy and joyful and great. Also, the very hard emotions, we need to learn to sit with them and to accept that we are imperfect. And we are so small in a huge universe that's nature. And, very connected, but we don't know even what's all beyond us, above us. We have an idea, but not really. And we're only living, 80 years or something. And we take ourselves so serious. So I think we should let go that a little bit.
Yeah, come back
and embrace the imperfect again and the real.
And the real.
Renaissance of real.
Renaissance of the real. And I just want to end on the note that my friend, she had her eyes closed and she said she loved the way the light hit her closed eyes through the fabric. And to me, that's the perfect incarnation of being in nature. Obviously the sun's not always here. It comes and goes. It's seasonal. Just like how our connection with nature is seasonal, but it's always there, and to hone in onto that presence and to channel the energy that comes from that. I'm super excited to see where this work goes. So thank you once again for coming on the podcast and for blessing us with your knowledge. It's an honor, and we wish you the best for your future projects and designs.
Thank you so much for having me and for your interest, and I hope it sparks some inspirations. But
it sparked so much inspiration, and hopefully for all the students listening as well. What you've said was so fascinating.
No, and I find it very important, students are the voice of the future, because you will not be student at some point anymore, and then we need you.
We need you.
Yes.
All right. Once again, this has been Annabelle Schneider. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you for the next one. Have a nice day.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.